We're going to be doing this. This is now the fifth out of six of our proactive wellness program, where our goal was to do basically six programs and each talk about a different topic. And we're now culminating the program with, inshallah, one more at the end of it. Going to be talking about preparation around Ramadan. So that will be next month. So we'll put out some information about that. But today we're talking briefly about metaphysics of food, which Imam Dawood will expound upon more. I am talking a little bit about the food allergies and food sensitivities. So it'll be a continuation with food and then broadly looking at that in different ways. So, and I'll also touch a little bit about seasonal allergies, which I know that that was our intention to talk about allergies because it's allergy season, and so I'll touch about that. But I think the primary goal was to talk about food and the metaphysics around it and sensitivity. So I'll keep it brief. I know time is limited, so I'll just talk a little bit and then hand it over to Imam Dawood, and then we can do a little Q&A and then wrap up. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to define food allergies and food sensitivities, because these are two terms that people get mixed up. What do you mean by food allergy? What do you mean by sensitivity? So the best way to understand it is with the peanut allergy example. That is a true food allergy where you consume something like a peanut and you have what's called an IgE mediated reaction, which means it's an immediate reaction. So you eat, if you're allergic to peanuts or whatever it is you're allergic to, you eat that, and then right then you get symptoms of throat closing or your lips swelling, or you get red, or you get hives, those types of things. That is oftentimes an emergency, and it needs like an epinephrine pen or going to the ER or steroids or something like that. That is a food allergy. Now, on the other hand, you have something called food sensitivity. Food sensitivity is a different type of reaction because it's not an IgE mediated reaction, which means that it's a slower, it's a delayed reaction. So that is what's mediated by something called IgG or IgM or IgA. And when I say these, I'm talking about different immunoglobulins, different aspects of our immune system that are mediating this reaction. So it's just easy to remember IgE is the allergies, and the rest can cause food sensitivity. Now, with food sensitivities, you won't get the typical throat closing and the hives and that. It'll be more so subtle symptoms like anxiety, lethargy, fatigue, rashes, bloating. So you eat something and you're sensitive to it, so maybe or maybe an hour later, 2 hours later, you don't feel well. That's something where you can be sensitive to certain foods. So now the question is, why does this happen? Why do we have food sensitivities? And again, I'm focusing more on sensitivities because it's pretty understood what allergies are and how we need to treat them. But when we talk about food sensitivities, what essentially is happening is that we have a loss of what's called immune tolerance. So your immune system, anytime it acts or anytime it sees a food protein, any type of food protein, it can either it typically will develop a reaction against it. And so our immune system is designed to keep us essentially safe from all of these environmental factors around us. But there comes a time when the immune system can get dysregulated, and the food proteins that you eat, it starts reacting against that. And when that happens, and when it happens towards multiple foods, then we have what's called loss of immune tolerance. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. If you have an autoimmune condition, you're more likely to have this. If you have what's called leaky gut, which is a situation with intestinal permeability, because as we know, we have junctions in our gut that open and close to allow the food particles into the system. If that is damaged, then that can cause food sensitivities. Now, we also know that the foods we now consume have changed. They have GMOs, they have hybridization, there's pesticides. So all of these things contribute to a higher likelihood of developing an immune reaction against it. So, and also food coloring. If you add food coloring to foods, there's a higher likelihood of them causing an immune reaction. So we talked about symptoms, why it happens, and then is talking a little bit about testing. So when we talk about testing, there's, food sensitivity testing is like a little bit of a buzz thing now, where you have a lot of different companies offering it and offering different tests and so on. So how do we understand that? Well, the first thing is that should we do the test or not? And I think that I think it's definitely a little bit overdone, because it's not always a perfect test. That's what's important to understand. So the first thing to understand is what happens if you do a test and you're completely negative on the test, but you actually know that when you consume a certain food, you react against it. Well, in that situation, one of the things, because it's not a perfect test, you can be negative on the test because, let's say, the test is checking for IgG, which is an immunoglobulin G, but your reaction again is IgM or IgA, a different type of reaction you're having. Well, the test is not going to pick that up. So there is discrepancies between the test and what you experience in real life. The other thing is, in some situations you do a test and you're positive for, like, 40, 50 foods. What does that mean? Well, if you're positive for 40, 50 foods, it's likely that it's not that you have a problem with all of those foods, but you have an underlying gut related issue that's making, like leaky gut, for example, that is making you intolerant or have a problem with all of those foods. So there is a possibility of it showing that much of a difference. And then we have cooked versus raw. And what I mean by that is that when you check a food sensitivity test, a lot of times it's checking just raw food. But we know that if we cook food, the protein nature of the food changes. And so when that happens, then it's entirely possible that you don't react to a food when it's raw and you react to it when it's cooked. So the test can show you something, and then when you actually consume it in real life, it changes. And sometimes you also, when you put foods together, then putting foods together changes the nature of the food as well. So sometimes you react to a food or you don't react to a food individually on a test, but when you actually in real life put two foods together, it creates a different protein and you can react to that as well. Just as a technical point, the best method of testing food sensitivity is the ELISA method. That's a lab method to test food sensitivities. And so it has to be an ELISA method of food sensitivity testing in order for it to be valid. Anything else, when they say, this is a patented technology, or this is, whatever the latest technologies are, it has to be an ELISA method for testing, which goes also to this point about there are some tests you can do at home with a finger prick. So these food sensitivities come where you just need a drop of blood, and that can test for all these different foods. Well, a drop of blood is generally good for testing like one or two foods, but when it comes to 30 or 40 foods, like a finger prick is not enough for that. So that's the important part on it. When it comes to a gold standard ELISA method, then you need more blood to run that test. Then there's a point on proteins versus fats versus carbs. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're eating fats or carbs and then you're reacting, you have, let's say, bloating, you have fatigue, all this, or these symptoms, then that's usually not a food sensitivity, because food sensitivity is only to proteins. So if you have a problem with fats, for example, you can have an underlying gallbladder issue, which is causing the symptoms related to that. That's not a food sensitivity. So that's an important point to know. And then sometimes no matter what you eat, you have bloating. And so that can be something like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is a situation where there's bacterial imbalance causing your symptoms. So it's important to differentiate these in understanding how to address them. MSG is also very important to mention. MSG in our foods definitely affects the immune system and causes a lot of problems. So MSG is important. And then lastly, I'll mention, as far as food sensitivities go, just how we can approach food sensitivities. People often ask, can you get rid of these? Can they be gone from, if you do have food sensitivities, can they be fixed? Well, in some cases, yes, and it depends on the situation. So I think the main thing to understand is that if you have, for example, a leaky gut type of situation going on, then there are ways to change your diet and use certain supplements and nutraceuticals to actually combat that the food sensitivity. So just going towards a more whole foods, more of a whole foods plant-based approach that has a lot of diverse plant fibers. I keep going back to that point. Diverse plant fibers is extremely good for the gut, and that can really help food sensitivities. And then there are certain supplements, when we talk about probiotics, L-glutamine, things like this that can help. For example, if there are leaky junctions and so on, that can be very effective for it. So there are definitely treatment options for food sensitivities. A lot of it is about finding out what is the underlying issue and what is the underlying imbalance and how we can fix that. So I want to just take a few minutes just to talk about the seasonal allergies that we all are familiar with, and then we can close on this chapter. Um, so now seasonal allergies, again, I think there is a lot of overlap between it because you're still dealing with the immune system. And with the immune system, when you have these mast cells, which have histamine in them, and they are your kind of frontline defense. They're in these areas, your oral cavity and nasal passages. They're in these areas where it is the first contact to the outside world, outside environment. And so, at the moment you are exposed to something like pollen, ragweed, all these different environmental allergens, the mast cells will um, have a reaction and release all this histamine, which is a lot of times what results in all those vasomotor symptoms like runny nose, sneezing, all that. And we know typically here Austin tends to be a very, very bad for that. So it is a manifestation of a hyperactive immune system working kind of in overdrive and releasing those mediators like histamine. So there's certain things that, like caffeine, dairy, chocolate as well, processed foods, sugar, artificial sweeteners, all of these can sometimes exacerbate the symptoms of seasonal allergies. So I think the dietary aspect is important to cover first. Um, so a lot of times, even if you're having not food sensitivities, but seasonal allergies, a dietary approach can be a very good approach to start with, and always should be your first approach. So diet, the lifestyle part, because as we know, the immune system, when you're not sleeping well, when you're highly stressed, when you're not moving well, all of that, we always discuss it, right, every time. That forms your foundation. So the immune system will never be in a calm state if that's the case. So, so yeah, diet, and we can try something like an elimination diet where you eliminate the more allergenic or inflammatory foods, and that can be helpful. And then there are certain supplements like quercetin, probiotics, zinc. Zinc is very good for the immune system. Vitamin C is very good. Vitamin A. And then there's things like bromelain, a stinging nettle, which can be consumed in tea form as well. And then apple cider vinegar is another one that has been very effective for seasonal allergies. So there are various different supplements and various different, basically, herbs and nutraceuticals that can be used. The pharmaceuticals are your typical, Zyrtec, Claritin, these ones, antihistamines, essentially. Again, they're doing that. They're blocking the receptor, the histamine from being released from the mast cells. That's what they're doing. So, but I think it's always better to try and take a more natural approach. So the supplements, yeah. So allergies is obviously, it's a broad topic. I just wanted to summarize it, and yeah, I'll maybe just hand it over to Imam Dawood, and then we can have a little discussion.